Okay, my friends, we're going to do something a little bit different tonight. We're going to cover the Colorado experiment. I'm going to give all the details, but first I'm just going to lay out the basics of the situation. Then I'm going to put all the text and the actual workout days and all that jazz. I'm not going to narrate that. I'm just going to post it up. You can read it at your leisure. You guys know how to read. Okay, so I'm going to get started. In May of 73, an experiment in muscle building began, and it took place with the subjects being Arthur Jones, the inventor of Nautilus, and Casey Viator. Art, of course, was the chief marketeer and proponent of the Nautilus system and everything that goes with it. And Casey was the 1971 Mr. America, actually was a teenager and won the regular Mr. America, which was phenomenal. He was 19. And so he was obviously genetically gifted and an up and coming bodybuilding phenom at that point. Um, Both men had lost considerable muscle weight and size from their previous peaks, and the experiment was designed to see if they could regain this lost muscle in a very short time using primarily Nautilus Omni machines and an extremely high intensity but brief style of training. So the first obvious question would be, what exactly were the Omni machines? Well, the Omni machines were used, or were at least slated to be used, in the Colorado experiment, and they were for doing negative only training, and they had a foot pedal that enabled you to get the weight in place so that you could then do the negative on your own. And there were like five machines. Uh, so anyway, Jones had lost a lot of mass from his previous peak weight of like claimingly 200. And largely because he was just too busy to train because he was doing all kinds of entrepreneurial pursuits. And anyway, he lost a lot of weight, and so before the Colorado experiment, they did do sort of a mini version of it where it wasn't even mini; it was actually longer. It was 7 weeks, and Arthur came to the conclusion that he did gain some weight back, but not as quite as much as he wanted to. And based on that, that was in the fall of 72. So the experiment again happened starting in 73. Um, but for the actual experiment, Jones got down to 144, and Casey went down from his peak of 218 in 71 to a very lean 167 going into the experiment. Again, they were trying to do this in a 28-day period, which is pretty insane. So there was a doctor that was in charge of the experiment, and it was at the University of Colorado there. And the doctor had met Casey in 71 after his Mr. America win at 19 and was extremely impressed with not only Casey's muscle size and strength, but his flexibility and endurance levels at the same time, as these traits were usually ones that you trained separately and seldom, if ever, were found in one individual, let alone an individual that was only 19 years old. And then also, we got to keep in mind that the early 70s was a time when the iron sports were going through a lot of changes, one of which being the more positive outlook towards resistance training and weight training in general in the overall sports arena. Whereas weightlifting and bodybuilding previously had been viewed somewhat negatively in sports. People said it made you muscle bound, it slowed you down, it made you less flexible. And that's kind of what the coach's mantra of the earlier days was. But now that the genre was being viewed more favorably, there were bigger and better opportunities for the makers and sellers of the related equipment. And of course, Mr. Jones recognized this opportunity for what it was and was hell bent on making the most of it. He thought the study ran at a prestigious university by a well known doctor would lend credibility to his claims for his new Nautilus machines. Now, according to Randy Roach, who was the author of Muscle, Smoke, and Mirrors, uh, Jones had trained for a 7 week period, as we mentioned, previous to the big experiment using negative only training, and he only got up to 169, which was, far less than the goal. Though he claimed that his strength levels did come back to about as good as they'd been before. He had stated that negative training was 40% better than positive, and that static training was 20% better than positive. And he argued that the Cybex machines, which were only focused on the positive phase, were therefore inferior to his Nautilus units. In fact, he designed 5 Nautilus machines built for negative only training that he planned to use for the Colorado experiment. So the machines were for biceps, triceps, shoulders, chests, and a multi machine. Again, all of which use these pedals to allow the user to basically complete the positive phase for you so that you could set yourself up to do just the negative part. Now, as the 7 week program did not work out as well as planned, Arthur decided to use both positive and negative training for the experiment, as he was already coming to the conclusion that although the negative phase was crucial, that it worked better when used along with the positive as opposed to by itself. Casey had experienced a terrible accident where he damaged a finger lifting and then developed a bad infection related to that, and he was unable to train for quite some time. As a result, he lost a lot of muscle and he got all the way down to 167 from his previous peak of 218. So in the experiment, again, he starts at 167, Jones is at 144. Jones got up to 162 at that point, and Casey got up to 212. So Casey had gained 45 pounds, but using a certain method of measuring lean mass, it was alleged that Casey had lost 17 pounds of fat also during the period of the experiment. So it was stated that he had gained 63 pounds of muscle mass during this time. Now, it later came out that the device used to determine the lean muscle percentage was inaccurate and could not be a reliable source of data. Still, even if that was completely off, we do have a gain of 45 pounds in 28 days, and only 14 of those days were training days. But it wasn't like real consistent as to every other day or something like that. You'll see as the workouts get laid out later. Most folks in the game attribute the gains to steroids, but Casey, while freely admitting he had used them, claimed he did not use them for the experiment, as Jones had a strong attitude about Casey remaining drug free for the experiment and held a considerably valuable prize in store for him if he reached the established goals doing it his way, like maybe a Corvette or something of that nature. Now, the downside lowdown. What we need to keep in mind is that Mr. Jones, being the marketeer that he was, kind of rigged the game a little bit. Um, First, it is claimed that he and Casey purposely kind of starved themselves down to as low as they could stand to get. Um, and then when training started and the experiment began, the switch was flipped and they went into eating as much as 500 grams of protein a day, it's been said, at least in Casey's case. But Ellington Darden, who was also worked for Arthur Jones, said that he kind of oversaw the experiment and he saw what Casey was eating. He said he never went past 5,000 calories a day, and sometimes not much over 4,000, which seemed to him kind of light considering how hard he was training. Also, most experienced trainees understand that muscle is much easier regained than gained in the first place. It's called muscle memory, and it is definitely a thing. So, what did the training actually look like during the experiment? Jones personally trained Casey and pushed him to his limit on each exercise. Um, Kind of like a drill sergeant, I guess. Uh, Viator's routines averaged 12 exercises, but each workout only lasted 33.6 minutes. I'm sure, again, that's just an average. So the plan around the whole type of training is you could do one extremely intense set, which was uh, would apply to each exercise. You weren't doing multiple sets of any particular exercise. So you perform one extremely intense set listed in the workout. You've heard the term leave it all in the gym. Well, Arthur said, I want you to leave it all in the set. This type of training is brutally hard. And if you find yourself wanting to do another set of an exercise, rest assured you're doing it dead wrong. Some workouts list exercises more than once, but never back to back. Then we have regular style exercise, is where you perform both the positive phase and the lowering phase of each rep. And you perform both phases smoothly, with the up phase being 1 to 2 seconds and the lowering a little slower at 2 to 3 seconds. Continue each regular style exercise until it's impossible to do the full range positive phase. So that's what we call going to failure. Negative only style exercise. That's where you need one or two spotters, typically, if we didn't have the Omni machines, to perform most negative only exercise. Spotters help you lift the weight into the starting position so that you can lower the weight unassisted. Load the bar or machine with 30 to 40% more resistance than you could regularly handle. Spotters help you lift the bar or movement arm to the top position and make a smooth transfer to your contracted muscles. You lower the resistance slowly back to the starting position in 4 to 8 seconds. And then you repeat the procedures for 6 to 8 controlled negative only repetitions. Discontinue a negative only exercise when you're unable to lower the weight in 3 seconds. And we talk about rep ranges. For regular exercises, select a weight that allows the performance of between 7 and 10 reps. For negative only, select a weight that allows between 6 and 8 reps. Once you can perform the maximum of a rep range in good form, add 5% more weight the next time you do the exercise. Progression. Attempt constantly to increase the number of repetitions or amount of weight or both. Never sacrifice form in the attempt to make progress, though. Now we have something called metabolic conditioning, which is an important part of the Colorado experiment. To maximize this effect, without limiting strength and muscle gains, start off by resting no more than 1 minute between sets. The goal is to decrease rest periods to 30 seconds, but that should be done over several workouts, kind of gradually, because decreasing rest periods too quickly will impair strength and muscle gains. And we talk about training partners. For the best gains, team up with a serious training partner who can reinforce proper form and intensity on each exercise, as well as spot you on negative only exercises. If you train with a partner, do not take turns on each exercise as you normally might do with a partner. Each person should complete an entire workout prior to switching to the other person, which is a little bit different. Workout journal. So it's very important to keep accurate records. Date, exercises, the order, the resistance, the number of reps, overall training time of each workout, complete exercise descriptions are listed at the end of the article. So we're going to do that too. But as I said, I'm gonna shut up here. I'm gonna post the workouts. You can read them at your leisure, copy them, do whatever you want to do with them. But I thought it was kind of pointless for me to sit here and just read the workouts themselves. So maybe I'll play some tunes in the background while you look at that, and we'll also put some pictures in here and stuff like that. So that's about it for the early parts.